What percent of fights end up on the ground? 2019 research. This comes from rollingaroundbj.com. I'll give you the link. This is not my study. This is my commentary on this study. I thought it was a great article. I'll send you the links below and you can check it out yourself. So, just some background here from rollingaroundbjj.com. They analyzed 383 street fights to better understand the claim that most fights end up on the ground. Specifically, they looked at number one, what percent of street fights end up on the ground? Number two, how do the fights end up on the ground? And number three, how good is BJJ for street fighting? Obviously, this is a BJJ website, so the answer to this is good. So I'm not really going to focus on this. I think that topic's been, that's like a dead horse. Yeah, it is good for street fighting. We know that. I don't need to tell you that. You can find other research and videos, but I do want to talk more about this because there's a lot of speculation going on around that, and I just wanted to kind of quickly summarize in video format what these guys came up with. 383 street fights. Okay, so in a nutshell, you can see that 69%, this blue stuff here, out of all those 383 fights, 69% did not go to the ground. They finished without ending up on the ground. I thought that was kind of interesting. Only 31% ended up on the ground. And of those 31%, most of them, 59%, was because they fell or they got knocked to the ground. And the other 41% of this 31% here was because of a deliberate takedown. So again, if you look at the details and how they came up with these fights, they didn't say, hey, they didn't search in YouTube for the keywords ground fight. They just did a search on street fight, let the engine work, and then they analyzed those 380 or whatever it was, 380 plus street fights. And of the ones where you're deliberately taking somebody down, it was 41%. The remaining, most of them were because they fell to the ground or got knocked to the ground. And out of all of the fights, most of them did not go up, ending up on the ground. Kind of interesting, contrary to, we hear that popular statistic that 90% of fights go to the ground. Well, this study doesn't seem to support that. True or false, how universal or not, I can't say, but out of the studies they analyze, again, I'll show you the article, you can judge for yourself. So here's a summary. Number one, most fights start with someone who's unprepared getting punched in the face, even though there's lots of indicators it's about to happen. Okay, so if you observe the fight, you'll see that one of the guys got punched in the face and apparently didn't see it coming, even though you and I could see it coming, and I guess if you train for it, you see it coming. These are called indicators. Number two, the aggressor then gains the initiative with a flurry of punches and often wins within seconds. I've seen so many of these too. So anyway, that's what they observed. Bullet number three, most losses were a result of not having a basic boxing protective stance or guard and getting hit in the face by an unskilled opponent. So basically, I guess, their hands were down, or if their hands are up, they didn't know how to protect themselves, etc. And they got nailed as indicated in bullets 1 and 2. This we know, less than a third of the fights ended up on the ground in a way that grappling would be useful. Okay, that was a previous screen. When used, takedowns are one of the most effective street fighting techniques because they either end the fight or put you in a dominant position. Now, the examples that they gave, and I believe that they're referring to, are in the case where they end the fight, they're throws. Okay, they're basically throws where the guy lands on his head and gets knocked out. Not takedowns in the typical sense that grapplers would think. But so I would rephrase this and say when used, throws were one of the most effective street fighting techniques because they either ended the fight or put you in a dominant position. So that's my take on that. Bullet number 6, grappling styles like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are very effective in street fights. Surprise, surprise. Especially for gaining and maintaining a dominant position. Nothing new there. 7, multiple attackers are more likely to be an issue if you are in a striking-only fight and get knocked down. So what this basically means, My understanding is that if in this fight that occurred that they observed, if it ended up in a grappling situation, because one guy initiated as a grappling when they went to the ground, nobody really, not that many people really jumped in. I think there's only 2 or 3 fights where people jumped in and started striking the guy in the ground. So in contrast, the fights where they were just a bunch of punchers and not grapplers. So in the situations where there's a bunch of punchers and strikers, a guy hits the ground, they jump in and they start pounding. Okay, the friends jump in. So it's almost as if like there's this like psychological phenomenon going on where if you start grappling with somebody and you go to the ground, it's like everybody's watching, or they think they're watching UFC or something, and then they hang out and just watch. Nobody's jumping in and punching you. However, if you're just with a bunch of strikers, brawlers, and somebody hits the ground for some reason, their friends feel like they can jump in and they start jumping in on and punching you. So anyway, these are the observations, the summary that they said, and I wanted to note bullets 1 and 2. I circled them in a blue dotted line just to keep that in mind. This is basically most fights start with someone who's unprepared. They get punched in the face, and then the aggressor who does that follows up with a flurry of punches. I'd also call that, firepower. You've heard that term. So one punch, boom, and then they follow up, and then they win the fight. Ends it right there. So what I wanted to do was, if you see one of my other videos, I'd like to explain this in terms of my diagram here, that this is the anatomy of any physical confrontation. So everything that we just talked about right now, that's all happening down here. You're physically engaging somebody, there's a preemptive strike, a reflex, or this is like your preemptive strike, or you're blocking somebody who's attacking you, and then you follow up and you resolve the conflict. Everything that we talked about, those 7 bullets, are all happening here. And then as you can see from these videos, before this is happening, while this is happening, there's a lot of posturing, mouthing off going on, shoving, and then they'll get into fighting stance. So a lot of ego going on here. What I'll also add to this is that, remember those bullets 1 and 2 that I circled with the blue dotted line? Well, basically, AKA the sucker punch, and that's happening right around here. Here's a preemptive strike. And it seems to me that, when you do this and then you follow up, you can preempt a whole lot of stuff. I mean, you can probably preempt the guy who has weapons. The guy could be a boxer. The guy could be a grappler. He can be bigger than you, etc. And basically, you sucker punch him at this point and you're done, according to the stats, the statistics on this study. Okay, so my question then is, everything above this green line, what happens here? I mean, this is a full life cycle right here. Why is everything jumping down here? Jumping down below this green line right into this thing here? Well, I'll tell you why. Everything above this green line, okay, this is all stuff that relies on your awareness, and these are self-defense skills versus getting into a fight skill. At the end, I'm going to show you this video that kind of demonstrates this. But everything that's going on here, you don't see this in that study. Why? Because it's probably not exciting, or you probably don't know. It doesn't get caught on tape. But all of this stuff that happens above the green line, this is the stuff that can keep you out of jail. This is the stuff that can probably preempt all of this, prevent it from happening. This is the stuff that keeps you alive. This is the stuff that your grandmother, your wife, your daughter, that you want them to do. You don't want them ending up here in this. I mean, sometimes you can't avoid it, but you don't want to be there. This is, if you're smart and you want to live to a ripe old age and stay out of jail and enjoy your freedom and retire and die of natural causes, you want to stay above the green line. Okay. Okay. So that's that. So here are my simple conclusions. Again, I'm taking a self-defense oriented point of view here, not an MMA point of view or a combative. As I mentioned, stay above the green line. Okay, that's my conclusion, my key conclusion. My second conclusion is primarily train your verbal de-escalation skills, the passive stance instead of a fighting stance, because it is your fighting stance. again, I'm going to show you a little clip that shows the difference between these two. I will assert that you never have to go into a fighting stance ever if you have a self-defense orientation. I'll probably create a separate video on that, but take that, challenge me on that, give me some comments, but that's where I stand. And I think I got a lot of good evidence and street-proven reasons to make that assertion. Also, primarily trained preemptive strikes to end the fight and neutralize the more skilled striker, the kicker, and grappler. And I would even say the armed person, but, you know, that's like a different branch that we'd have to go into more details. But train your preemptive strikes. And we're talking non-telegraphic preemptive strikes from the passive stance or your regular stance if you're that good. Most people train their strikes from a fighting stance and they telegraph and they step in. Preemptive strikes means you can strike while you're talking, while you're playing with the guy's head, while you're trying to gain time, and then you can end the fight and then neutralize it and follow up. That's what the study shows, that the guys that did that, most of them, that's how they walked away. Secondarily train, and I'm not saying don't train, I'm just saying if you had to prioritize your day or your week or your month, primarily train these, secondarily train what I bet you're doing now, striking, kicking, and grappling in an MMA style scenario. I bet you that's what you're doing. That's what most people do. They're all focusing below the green line, okay? They're not focusing above the green line. And then just getting to the edge of that green line with this. So I'm sure some of you will disagree, etc. Love to hear your points. Post some comments there. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I was going to leave with a video clip, which is right here, of self-defense versus fighting. This is by a guy named Richard Dimitri. Check it out and let me know your thoughts.
Now, what I'm about to show you, we're going to create a little scenario for you, and you tell me if this is self-defense or not. This person gets into my face, he's verbally mouthing off, he pushes me. I push him back. He goes to throw a punch, I block it, I pop him in the face, he falls, I run away. Is that self-defense?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, how is that self-defense? Why is that self-defense? Yeah.
He pushed you first and swung first.
Ah, he pushed me first and swung first. Okay, so that makes it self-defense. Okay, yeah?
If you didn't do anything, you could get harmed.
If I didn't do anything, I could get harmed for sure. But you missed something there, right? Watch. He gets into my face, he pushes me. I push him back. What did I just do?
Oh, that's an act.
That's what?
It's an act.
Say that louder.
It's an act.
Yeah, I'm fighting. Yes, now I'm fighting, right? So that's no longer self-defense, is it? So what I just did now is I participated in the escalation of this particular situation that was unfolding. Meaning, I provoked him, right? Self-defense is not about who started it. Self-defense is not about hurting another human being. It's not about punishing them. It's not about teaching them a lesson. It's not about who's right or wrong, and it's not about who started it. Self-defense is about going home at night. Self-defense is about going back to your day the way you started it before this conflict happened. Self-defense is first and foremost about prevention. Why? Well, simply stated, if you're not there, it can't happen to you. So, that's simply stated. Number two, if you cannot prevent it, then it's about the ability to de-escalate it, defuse it, how to get out of this situation without necessarily having it get physical, right? And if that doesn't work, then the last resort on a moral, legal, and ethical level is to fight back. That's when you have no other choices. That's when you hit the person. So a self-defense situation looks more like something like this. He steps in, he pushes me, I back away, I try to call him, hey man, I'm sorry. He swings the punch, I block it, bam, I hit him once, and I run. That would be self-defense. You see, the difference between self-defense and fighting, a fight, you're walking towards the situation. You want to prove this person wrong. You want to teach them a lesson. You want to correct them. You want to hurt them. For whatever reason, you're angry at this person, and you're going to be moving towards them. If you're moving towards that person, that's no longer self-defense. If you find yourself doing this, then that makes you part of being an attacker. That makes both of you just as fault. You're just as fault as the other person who's doing whatever it is they're doing to you. Self-defense looks like this. You're backing away from the situation. Why? I don't want any part of this. I left the house today. I'm on my way to school. I'm on my way to a friend's house, to the store, to the mall, wherever it is I'm going. I'm not going out looking for a fight, looking to beat somebody up. I'm not going out to hurt somebody, right? But all of a sudden, somebody got in my face. And they're trying to do something, lure me, grab me, whatever it is, talk to me, mouth off, whatever situation. It could be anything from bullying to something that's happening in a mall to whatever it is, right? We're going to get into these situations a little deeper in a minute. But self-defense, you're not doing this. You're doing this. And if somebody puts their hands on you, you're certainly not doing that. That's provocation now. That's challenging. I'm threatening you. I'm challenging you. I'm pushing you. Plus, shoving another human being, in Canada anyway, is an offense. That's illegal. Pushing somebody with intent to harm or threaten, that's illegal in the court of law. You're not allowed to do this to another human being. Now, I just did that, and technically I'm not allowed, like I said, but it's a demonstration, so it's okay, right? Awesome. Okay, good. All right.